This is the Dreamers Podcast, where dreamers share their stories to inspire you. Now, join host Joe Pardo as he interviews a dreamer who's living their dreams.
Welcome to the Dreamers Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Pardo, and today I am interviewing Martin Altersitz, who is living his dream through volunteering and teaching. Welcome to the show, Martin.
Hey, Joe. Thanks for having me today.
Thanks for being on. Let's get started by giving the audience some background about yourself.
Well, I'm 29 years old, went to Kingsway Regional High School. From there, went to Stockton State College, where I studied communications. From there, wasn't really sure what to do and moved home. I got involved with a couple of volunteer programs, which led me to the education field, and now I'm an educator.
So what would you say inspires you the most?
What inspires me the most is probably the helping. When I see the way that people's faces light up and the things that they learn and can do after we've worked with one program or another, whether it be HOBY, which is the Hugh O'Brien Youth Leadership, or Habitat for Humanity. They're both very different organizations, but I mean that inspires me because I'm helping someone either change their life or I'm changing their life. As far as education, being a teacher goes, just the satisfaction I get from, a child learning a new concept, just seeing their eyes lit up because they grasp fractions or they grasp the concept of an adjective versus an adverb. So it's just nice to see that I'm making a difference somewhere.
That's really nice. How did your dream come about?
Like I said, when I graduated from Stockton with my communications degree, I came home and was very, very unsure what I wanted to do. I got involved with a couple different jobs. I've had a lot, but eventually I got involved with Hugh O'Brien Youth Leadership, which is a leadership seminar for high school sophomores, and where they learn different leadership abilities and skills. They get to meet people from the media, political figures, other volunteer activists, and that sort of gave me this drive to want to change children's lives, and I wanted to be a guidance counselor. I went to visit my old guidance counselor. She was like, well, if you want to be a guidance counselor, you should probably be in the classroom first. And I said, okay, what do you recommend? She goes, well, there's a couple positions here. So I got in the classroom, I think 3 or 4 days into being a paraprofessional or a teacher's aide. I said, I don't want to be a guidance counselor. I want to be a special education teacher. And I just ended up sticking with the volunteer program, HOBY, and with my dream of being a teacher. And from there, things just sort of kept spiraling, and I got involved with Habitat for Humanity, and it's been great.
How was your dream received by your family members?
When I first started HOBY, my mom was super excited because I was never a kid to get out and do much. Even when it came to summer camps or any kind of sports, I was not very outgoing. I was a little shy, sort of reserved. You could probably say introverted. So my mom thought it would be a great idea, and she was really pushing for it. I had no desire to do it when it was first offered to me. My sister signed me up and even forged my signature to make sure I could go and that I would go. And, I mean, luckily, I ended up loving it. When I found out I wanted to be a teacher, I mean, my family was just ecstatic. I mean, I've been being pushed to be a teacher since I was probably 8. My mom was a teacher, principal, superintendent. My dad was even in the education business for a while. So it was, that was well received. When it came to doing Habitat for Humanity, my mom wasn't super excited that I'd be be in charge of 30 college students, let alone be out of contact in the middle of Kentucky, for an entire week. And she wasn't super excited about it. But when I came back and told her all the amazing things that went on, she was much happier about it. So,
what steps did you take to get started with volunteering and then education later on?
Well, like I said, with the volunteering, I was sort of thrown headfirst into the deep end, into a program that I had no idea what it was. The first day we're jumping up, we're cheering and, making up these different chants, and it was overwhelming. But when I realized that I loved it, I said, okay, let's keep going. So when I finally decided that I want to be in guidance or education, I went to do some research on the internet. I looked at Rowan's graduate programs. I looked at other graduate programs. I finally decided on one in Delaware, mainly because it was an accelerated program. So instead of having to do 3 or 4 years, because I had no education background for my college classes, I was able to do it in 2 years and not only receive my teaching certificate but for regular ed, but also for special education too. And from there, it just sort of, the steps are are tougher because then, just like any job, you have to go and you have to interview, and you have to find a school that, likes your credentials. And, sometimes it's who you know. And luckily I have some people who know some educators. So it was nice to go on a lot of interviews and finally figure out what I could and couldn't do.
So were there any roadblocks starting with your volunteering, and also what roadblocks did you hit with your education path?
Well, with volunteering, the first roadblock was not knowing what I was getting myself into. It's very difficult to say, all right, I'm going in, I know what I'm doing, when you have no idea what you're doing. I mean, I looked around and I had a table of 8 students who were sort of looking at me going, okay, what's next? And I'm looking at every other table going, all right, what's next? Because I had no idea. But, and that's difficult, being sort of the newbie, the new guy, and finding your way. But now I'm seen as a veteran, and, I actually lead an entire section of people who do the same thing I do. So it's, once you get over those roadblocks, it's no big deal. With Habitat for Humanity, the roadblocks are, I'm driving a 15-passenger van with 10 college kids crammed into it, on roads that are, what most people see as one lane on the side of a mountain, and it's 2-lane roads. So the obstacles there are, geographic ones. You're in a place you don't know with a bunch of people you don't know, driving a van that you're not used to. After that, it's pretty simple. Once you get to your destination, you start to talk to the kids and develop a rapport. I don't want to call them kids; they're college students. You start to develop this rapport, and those obstacles, those roadblocks, sort of diminish. With education, obviously you have to go through classes, and I would say the biggest obstacle or roadblock that you face is when you're done your classes and you get into a classroom, you realize that you've learned almost nothing. Nothing in that classroom can teach you how to deal with a truly irate parent or a child that wets themselves 9 times out of 10, So these are things that you have to learn just within your first couple years and really develop a whole new system, what you thought was going to work and what actually works.
So was there any parts of your dream that hasn't quite worked out for you, or the way you expected it to?
There are plenty of things that don't come to fruition, especially when you have expectations. So one of the biggest, I would say, parts that doesn't really come to be is when you have scheduling conflicts. I want to do 3-4 HOBYs in a year, but I don't have that time to take off of work. Or maybe I've already taken too many days and I can only do 1, whatever it may be. For like Habitat for Humanity, they changed the date this year, so I simply can't go because it's in the middle of a week in May. In fact, they're there right now, so I hope they're having a fun time. So it's really scheduling with the volunteering. And like I said, with the teaching, it's really, you have this entire expectation that you see in your head of what your classroom is going to be, how it's going to be run, and, you've got it all ready to go, and in 5 minutes it's completely shut down by one kid. So you really have to go with the flow when you're an educator, when you're a teacher. So a lot just doesn't happen, and you have to be ready to either change what you're doing or go with what is going on.
So if you were stranded on a desert island with your family, what are 3 things you would bring?
Well, as I mentioned before, I was kind of an introvert when I was younger, and I still have those tendencies. I mean, with my family there, it's great because I get the interaction that I would need, but I would need some time away. So I would definitely say I would need my iPod with endless battery, a great book. It could be my favorite book. It could just be a brand new book. As long as it's good, I don't care. And my surfboard, if I'm on an island, I want to be able to get out on those waves.
Do you have any dreams for the future?
Yeah, my biggest dream is to do more and more HOBYs in different states and different sites. Supposedly, Alaska is starting one, and I would love to get involved with that. Any volunteer programs that I could do overseas would be welcome. Even if I'm not getting paid, if I had to pay my way, I'd go. Just to see some of the world. To be able to help someone, across the world would mean the world to me. So, those are my big ones.
So do you have any last thoughts you'd like to share?
Yeah, if there's anything that you want to get involved with that even remotely piques your interest, I would say that you should do it. I know Riverwinds is doing a thing that they call ICANN, where they're teaching kids with disabilities to ride bicycles. So I'm getting involved with that. I have no idea if I'm going to like it. I'm sure I will, but I'm giving it a shot. What's the worst that happens? I don't like it, and I don't do it again. But so if there's something that you see and you're like, you know what, that looks pretty cool, just go for it. Especially if it's a volunteer program, you're going to be making a difference in somebody else's life. The big thing is it makes you feel good too. You know, it's sort of the little secret about volunteering is, everybody else, you make someone else feel good, but in the end, it really makes you feel better and good about yourself. And I think that that's really where it's at. With
the bicycle volunteering, let me know when you're going to go do that, because I'd like to try to, if I can schedule it, I'd like to be able to be there.
Yeah, well, we can coordinate a date. I'll look at the dates again, and we can pick and just go together. Sounds good.
That would be awesome. All right, was there a Twitter or Facebook page or a website you'd like to plug?
Well, if you want to check out what HOBY's all about, you can go to HOBY.org. I'm sure, I think it's Facebook /HOBY. You can do that too. As for Twitter, there are probably hundreds of different HOBY sites, so finding one would be difficult. Maybe the one by you could find. But my personal one, if you want to see what we're doing this coming weekend, is at PA East Group D. At PA, like the numbers, or the letters P and A, Group D, the letter D. And I'll have pictures and status updates about what the kids are doing at that moment, and how they're enjoying it, how they're receiving it, and that sort of thing. And I usually keep it so that the parents can see what their kids are doing for the weekend, because a lot of these kids have never been away from home, and not only is it tough for the kids, I'm sure they don't care after a while, but the parents, it can be a tough one. So it's nice for them to see what's going on, but you guys can always check it out and see what we do.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Martin. I really appreciate it.
Not a problem. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Dreamers Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Dreamers Podcast. Join us on Facebook at facebook.com/Dreamers Podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the Dreamers Podcast, please send an email to j@jpar.co. This podcast is copyright 2014 by jpar.co. Have you ever wanted to share something with someone just because?
Well, we do, a lot. So we started a podcast about, well, whatever we want. My name is Joyce.
And I'm her lovely husband, Al. Well, you know what I mean. Hey, it's me, Al. Listen, I'm hijacking the Just Because podcast to start a new series all about the wonderful world of voice acting. Each episode, I'll have a professional voice actor on and ask them some serious, hard-hitting questions to get to the bottom of this world. World. If you've ever wanted to know about the inner workings of this magical and mystical business, tune into Just Because, Inside the Voiceover Studio. Tune in at justbecausepodcast.com and on iTunes.